All right, everybody, welcome back to RCT Creations, and this being the final episode of Houston Pleasant construction. The park is completed, but we just have a couple of detail things to get done. The first thing we're going to do is get a couple of, the first thing we're going to do here is get a guest information and ATM built over with the water rides in the more water themed section of the park. Pretty simple building to go up around these, and I didn't really want it to be horribly complicated. In fact, using more custom scenery, I probably could have made this building a lot smaller, but I think all in all, it's fine. I mean, it's just a really tall and really big building, very boxy, but it is what it is. Not too big a deal, but at the same time, we do need guests to be able to not have to walk all the way back up front to guest services, because if you're lost and you can't find the entrance, you might want to grab something from over there. As well as getting some more details in. I'm just going to put some more foliage in some of these places. Going to get a kettle corn stand placed in here. Well, popcorn stand in game, but going to be themed to kettle corn for this. I tend to record these a lot on Sundays, and actually just about a minute ago, the Kansas City Chiefs were eliminated from the playoffs in the NFL. I know I talk about that a lot in some of these videos, but something else to talk about outside of that. So a lot of Chiefs not fans are going to be really happy about that. I'm disappointed, but it had to come eventually. Now moving on to the park, getting a little bit of a merchandise stand placed towards the back of downtown. We put one in over by Zephyr as well, just to sell some souvenirs. Just a couple extra spots to make some money, and then also they can kind of serve as the quote-unquote photo place where you can buy the on-ride photos. I know in-game guests tend to buy them. Well, not tend to. They do buy them out of the exit, but just to have a little bit of a stand here for guests to stop at, just to make it a little bit more realistic. More merchandise here near Xenon TLS. Get a couple more shirts, couple more hats that are Xenon themed, and just kind of get it all wrapped up here. I kind of like the way that building wraps up with the entrance, and in fact, we had to kind of make those rocks a little bit taller. Now in Future World, gonna put in a few more of these trees just to kind of make it fill out a little bit better. Give it a little more detail rather than just being a bunch of dust and rocks. We want Future World to look otherworldly, believe it or not. So a little bit of these futuristic, not futuristic, these outer limit style trees I think look kind of cool. Then a balloon stall just on the other side, because guests love to buy balloons, lose them, and then buy them again. So just another good source of revenue for the park. Now begins the long, convoluted process of putting in benches and trash cans everywhere around the park. We're going to start in downtown, and what I'll tend to do is put a few in, leave a pretty big gap, and then in those gaps, I will fill in with trash cans. I try to go about maybe 7 to 9 tiles in between, so there's an odd number in between, and then where there's benches, you throw some trash cans in the middle. Now, obviously, that changes a lot based on where you're going to end up having your food stands and stuff like that, because obviously you want to change that quite drastically and have more benches and more trash cans next to those food stands, as you see right there with that kitchen right there and that food stand. But just continuing around, getting these benches placed. And this is always the most tedious part of the build, because at this point it's less about getting your creative, ideas flowing and more just getting everything you need in place for when guests visit. They're not horribly irritated. Your park rating doesn't tank because they don't have anywhere to sit, anywhere to throw things away. You don't get litter placed around everywhere and that kind of stuff. But with that midway there, where that train station is, just putting in some flowers, some more foliage just to kind of make it look a little more pretty. And getting these food places named. I ended up being very creative with this one. I think I called it Family Kitchen, and then we have the General Store. But just, again, detail work. And then we get to this point. Before I recorded this, I was kind of surprised I forgot to build restrooms literally anywhere inside the park. So definitely going to want to have some restrooms in your park. Otherwise, it's going to be very dirty, very quick. And your park rating also probably not going to be horribly good. But we'll put one in downtown. We'll put one on this backside of downtown close to the city waterworks and the other end of the tram station near Houston Comet. And then we will roll over to the family area, because with kids, they're probably going to want to use the restroom at some point throughout the day, especially if they're hanging out in this area. And then this one's pretty close in between 2 food stands as well, so it works out pretty well right there. And then just getting more and more placed along here as well. And then we want to go into Future World and then add one in here. And then the colors can be a little bit different. All my restrooms are literally like a copy and paste of the previous one. Just kind of the open there, the 2 posts to hold it up. Leave a little bit of an open area. Maybe there's some water fountains on each corner. I usually end up putting a couple benches or trash cans on the inside, just so guests do have some stuff to throw away. They can in that general area. Moving on. Just more detail work and more detail work. Again, pretty tedious process here. We're putting in another kettle corn stand, this one over near downtown, just so there's one on opposite sides of the park. And then this one's just kind of going back and forth and then making sure they look the exact same, because they are the same thing, so I want them to have that continuity as well. So now we're moving into hiring the staff. Again, this video full of long, tedious processes. I've thought a couple times about going back to these parks and just like getting rid of the travel areas and just having everyone free roam. But at the end of the day, I decided not to do that, because definitely zoning them works a lot better. Because they're not going to wander off and all 50 of your handymen be in the same area and leave the other part of the park unattended, because I tend to have that happen quite a bit. Mechanics are a lot easier. I'll just let them kind of free roam and then lock a singular mechanic to each coaster, and then the rest of them can wander around for the flat rides. With coasters, I just don't want them to get stuck for prolonged periods of time, because guests tend to get pretty complainy when stuff like that happens. They really tend to want to get off, and that's true in real life as well. But I tend to, when it comes to handymen, I want to have like the edge of their zones overlap by like 1 tile. And then you don't want to give them too much, but you also don't want to give them too little. It's just kind of finding that balance between what works and what doesn't. If you're going through your park, whether it be scenario playing or zoning them, or if you're going through and doing a sandbox park like this, where you want to see how much money your park can make, just kind of try to balance it out. Obviously, if you're doing a park where money's no object, you don't have to worry about the amount of spending you're doing here. But in this case, since we are focused on, trying to be profitable, we want to pay attention to how many handymen we have and what their zones are, because the staff cost can really run up on you really quick if you're not careful. So in my head, I kind of had a number I didn't want to go over, and that number was about 50. I ended up being pretty close. I think I hired 50 exactly. And then what I'll do, just for a little bit of added realism, you don't have to do it, is I'll hire 4 of them, one being a manager, which manages the whole department, and then a couple other supervisors. And then with them, I don't zone them at all. They can just kind of free roam wherever they want. And that just gives a little bit of added detail to the staff. And then when it comes to mechanics, I'll do the same thing. I'll hire, 3, one being a manager, 2 being supervisors. And as I said before, I'll limit 1 mechanic with a very small zone near the coasters, as you see with Zephyr right there. Same with Houston Comet. But if a coaster ever goes down, I want those back up. Those are definitely the highlight attractions of any park in this game. I mean, the game is called Roller Coaster Tycoon after all. So you want to keep the coasters' downtime to a minimum and try to keep them running as much as possible. After that, with mechanics, I'll just hire a bunch of them. In this park, I did 15, and then the ones that are not locked to coasters will just free roam for the rest. And then I disable money here, and there's a good reason for that, because when I first, dreamt this park, I did not want to own the entirety of this land. I didn't want all of this to be Houston Pleasant. And unfortunately, when you're in sandbox mode and you start limiting the amount of park you get, and you forget to disable land, or disable money, excuse me, you'll make all that money back by selling all that land. And I didn't want to do that, so I disabled the money, or disabled cash, and then just kind of limited an area, and I wanted it to be ultra specific. So this is another pretty long and tedious process to get all the land I want within the park, and then erase the stuff I don't want, because again, I didn't want the park to be this entire thing. With Funland, that's the park, that's the flagship park. I wanted to be absolutely massive, which it is. Joyland's the one I wanted to be a lot smaller. I think that park's 150 by 150. Funland's 500 by 500, I believe, and this one I think is 250 by 250. But I don't want to own all the land. I want it to be a little less restrictive than Joyland, but not so open and free that you can add whatever you want like you can at Funland. In Funland, I'm actually kind of on that balance, and it's kind of teetering where I'm making a lot less money than I used to. So that's something I'm definitely going to have to balance. Maybe I'll make a video, probably not, of rezoning all the staff at Funland, because that is definitely long overdue. And I'm not looking forward to it because it's going to be, again, a very, very long and tedious process. Now, before I delete all the land over here, at Funland and Joyland, I have a building called the corporate offices. Now, this is where the employees can come in and they just have a building where they can do their work locally. Maybe you have the executives coming in, stopping by, and you just want to give them all a place to work and a place to park so they can do their jobs effectively. So I ended up choosing this little plot of land right between Double Drop Falls and Xenon TLS. And I'm going to copy the exact style I used for the buildings at Funland and Joyland, although this one is pretty normally L-shaped is the term I think I will use for it. And then I ended up getting started and realizing I have this weird obsession with having an odd number, or just like in one tile space between the edge of the building and where the windows are. And I want one tile windows with one wall in between, just so it feels really uniform. But I had to delete the building, at least portions of the building, a couple times to get it all solved, and then go back and do everything all over again. But same style, white walls. Use the bricks on the corners just to give the edge of the building a little more texture. And then the blue windows, pretty basic. And then kind of the yellow outline just to kind of match the overall color scheme of the Fun Corporation. If you remember, Funland is kind of the blue main color. Joyland has a yellow main color, and that's what this is based on. And then Houston Pleasant actually has orange as kind of a main color for the park, and that's why you see the Ferris wheel in orange and the carousel in orange. Here at Funland, it's going to be the opposite. Although those two parks do have kind of a purple hue to them as well. But getting the detail work done, these brick walls that just kind of line the building, and then we're going to get that black stripe on the top just to kind of signify where the roof is going to be, and then get your standard base block pieces up top. And then I'll texture it just a little bit, so I'll put these more sheet metal style base blocks on top with a little bit of gray striping. And then we'll do just a little normal roof just to kind of differentiate the buildings a little bit. After that, it's just raising the land up so doesn't look too weird, because if you leave it very blocky or very square, it just looks unnatural. So it's just trying to do your best, or doing my best, to make it so it looks more natural. And then we're going to get a parking lot built on the side where those executives can then go park their car. And then we're going to edit the land around it, because I do not want the park land to incorporate that building in any way. Then we're going to build an access road off the side, and want that all to be one level. Didn't want it to go up and down too much, but that access road is going to go off. And the reason I did this is just because I really didn't want to have to build another exit ramp just for this, or build a bridge from the main parking lot over here. So we're just going to say it connects to a different road at the other side of that highway. Maybe there's a overpass or something it connects to. Then put up the signs that say, hey, this is the Funland corporate office. We'll get the one at the entrance. And then on that corner over there, we're going to build a little bit of a Zen garden. It's something I did at Funland first, and I really like the look of it, so I did it at Joyland too. And we're going to do it here, because I want my employees to have a chance to go and take a break if they want. Just go walk around this path a little bit, enjoy the smell of outside. You're going to hear a lot of B&M roar, because this building is placed right next to Xenon TLS, which is a pre-sand-filled B&M. And if you've ever been around one of those 90s B&Ms, those late 90s, early 2000s B&Ms, boy, they are loud. Now, up here in this corner, we're going to build the main maintenance shop. The final bit of detail right here. So whenever we hit the off season, which this park will have, when I get to the park tour, which will come out fairly soon, I'll kind of show the operating schedule for this park in comparison to the other ones. longer operating season than Joyland, but shorter one than Funland. So it's not going to be a year-round park like Funland is. But just getting the big shop taking shape here. Another big box, but this one I'm not too worried about with that because it's out of view of guests, and most big maintenance shops are just big boxes. But when you take your rides apart during the off season, or maybe you close one early, take the trains off of coasters, this is where they're going to go. So they can get rehab, taken apart, put back together, new grease on the bearings, new bearings even. But just get it all taken apart and replaced. But we're going to get a path built over to that. But that will wrap up the RCT construction for Houston Pleasant. Thank you all very much for tuning in to this. This has been really fun to do. I wish I had done this for Funland and Joyland, so this was kind of the way to get back in because there's a very similar philosophy between the parks. But thank you all for tuning in to this episode of RCT Construction. I will see you all in the next one. Have a wonderful day.